Welcome to the Writer's Studio. I'm Francesca Maroney. I'm one of the teachers at the school, and I'm so excited to also be able to work with organizing our readings for the school. Today, we are so excited to introduce to you 7 of our students who have been studying at the Writer's Studio for lots of years, cumulatively lots of years. I want to say a little bit about the school. We are the Writer's Studio, founded in 1987 by Pulitzer Prize-winning poet Philip Schultz. We offer our workshops both in person and online, and we have the goal of nurturing each individual student's inner work, inner voice. We welcome students at all stages, from those who have only dreamed of creative writing to those with MFAs who are looking for serious additional ongoing instruction. We operate in New York City, Tucson, San Francisco, Rome, and also online. That was unfortunate. We offer classes in either 6 or 8 week format, and we operate year round. So you can join us at any time of the year that works best for you. It is now my pleasure to introduce Tamara Schuyler. Tamara Schuyler has been a student at the Writer's Studio San Francisco on and off since 2011. Her fiction has appeared in Raritan, Cut Bank, Crack the Spine, and Smoke Long Quarterly, among others. And in 2015, her work received a Pushcart special mention. In a previous career as a science writer, she co-authored and contributed to numerous magazines and science reference books. She holds degrees in biology and linguistics and currently works as a linguist in the legal field. She lives in Oakland, California. Tamara, if you're ready to offer your reading, you can go ahead and unmute and take it away.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to read the first few pages of a story that's called Bloodstain. Ever since I married Jürgen Bittenberger, yes, he's German, and yes, that's his real name, I've been having dreams that I murder someone. The details vary from dream to dream, and usually I can't even remember who I murder or how. Although in one memorable case, it was a large man with a full head of hair, whose face and skull I crushed by pummeling him with a jagged rock. And no, this man was not my husband. Jürgen is quite short in any event. He seemed to be the owner of a Greek restaurant or something like that. But what I always do know is that the murder involves blood, because one of the things I'm desperate to hide is a blood-spattered white t-shirt. And it's mine. The bloody t-shirt is in every dream, and in every dream I'm trying and failing to hide it. Once I tried to leave it hanging on a sales rack at an expensive clothing boutique, the kind of trendy boutique I'm drawn to but can't afford. In another dream, I kept burying the shirt at the back of a high shelf in our bedroom closet, but then it kept showing up in my underwear drawer. That Greek chef, by the way, he was a bad person. And it might even be good that he's dead, but I'm pretty sure I did not kill him in self-defense. No one knows I did it, but I'm sweating and crying and moaning because I just know that Jürgen is going to find out and I'm going to go to prison for the rest of my life. And considering my grandmother and great-grandmother lived into their late 90s, that could be a very long time. I wake from these dreams paralyzed by self-doubt, wondering if I might actually have killed someone at some point in my past. I'm saying this strikes me as possible. That's how vivid and convincing these dreams are. If it turns out that I am such a person, a murderer, I mean, I imagine that Jürgen will be disappointed. He'll be upset that I misrepresented myself as something that I've turned out not to be: kind, forgiving, intelligent, risk-averse, someone whose greatest fault is to apologize more often than is necessary. I'm sorry, I'd say, and I would be. And he'd say that for once in my life, I'm apologizing for something that truly warrants feeling remorse. And upon hearing that word, remorse, my first thought would be that I'm surprised he knows that word in English. And then my second thought, following very quickly upon the first, would be that he might want to think about his recent ancestors' atrocities before judging others so harshly. We've been married 4 years, and I haven't told Jurgen a thing about these dreams. You'd think he'd wake up when I cry out, but he sleeps like a drowned goat. He claims this is the literal translation of a German idiom, but I sometimes suspect he manufactures his own personal vocabulary. And if he notices my night sweats, he probably attributes them to menopause. Jurgen and I met later in life. Him, after a 15-year relationship ended when he discovered his girlfriend was having an affair with her dentist, her lady dentist, Jurgen always points out with a wink. But whether this is because he delights in exploding people's assumptions or because he doesn't actually believe women can be dentists, I'm not sure. And me, at that time, I was just about to accept that I'd never meet a man I loved enough to give up my rent-controlled studio apartment. At the time he and I went on our first date, I was 48 and already having hot flashes. Soon enough, my periods stopped once and for all, and I was officially an old crone, or, according to Jurgen, an ugly grub. Which doesn't even make sense because a grub is an early phase of life. But he married me anyway in a tiny and very windy ceremony on the sidewalk under the North Tower of the Golden Gate Bridge at rush hour on a Wednesday. Jurgen is allergic to tourists, so a weekend was out of the question. In my favorite picture from the ceremony, you can see Jurgen grimacing at some unwelcome passerby and the skirt of my red dress billowing like sideways like it's trying to escape. And the bloody murderous dream started just a few weeks later. It was fitting that menopause coincided with a major life event, my wedding, because the start of menstruation had also happened at a time of great change in my life. Oh, by great, I mean significant, not good. My parents divorced just before I turned 13, and from that point, I lived with my father and his girlfriend for various complicated reasons, but mainly because my mother had joined a cult, and I got my period for the first time soon after we moved. But I didn't have anyone to talk to about it until my father's girlfriend yelled at me for taking her tampons without asking. Very soon after that, we watched The Day After in my social studies class at school, which, if you were around back then, this was 1984, you know, is a Cold War themed movie about the Soviet Union dropping nuclear bombs on Kansas City being the geographic center of the United States, I guess, as long as you don't take into account Hawaii or Alaska. I doubt the Soviets would have chosen Kansas City as their target, it being so far from any true metropolis. In any event, in the movie, it was Kansas City. The thing I remember best is a scene involving a young woman, and specifically it's that she's wearing all white, a long white dress. Actually, that seems an unlikely choice for a farmer's daughter, which I think is what she was. So maybe it was white overalls? Who knows? It was white. And after she's exposed to nuclear radiation, she has this huge red stain around her crotch area to indicate she's bleeding heavily from her vagina, an indelible image. And from my point of view, because of the timing of things, my parents' divorce, starting my period, my dad's hostile girlfriend, this image had nothing to do with the nuclear threat. It was a picture of what was going to happen to me if I didn't manage things well. And I'll stop there. Thank you very much. And now I will introduce the next reader, Victoria Mack. Victoria Mack is a writer, actor, and teacher who splits her time between Savannah, where she teaches at the Savannah College of Art and Design, and Brooklyn. She has been published in various literary mags, including Minerva Rising, Papichu, Honey Guide, Oya Drum, Kitchen Table Quarterly, Oddball, Flash Fiction Magazine, and Beyond Words. Her short play, Three Women, was produced in Philadelphia. Her work has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and the Best of the Net Award. Her MFA is from NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, and her BA is from Barnard College. More information can be found online at www.victoriamackcreative.com.
Thank you so much, Tamara. I'm Victoria Mack. I'm going to be reading 3 poems today. The first poem is called Red Geraniums. It was published in the Jewish Literary Journal in 2022, and I wrote it in Joel Hinman's class here at the Writers' Studio. When the officers knew the enemy was closing in, they threw the young ones in open wagons and brought them north. The boy was 13 or 14, but starvation made him look like a child, big-eyed and shrunken. The days grew colder the further north they got, and the nights were a cold there is no word for. The winter burned them. Bits of flesh fell off the boy's feet, and he gripped them with his hands to ease the pain. When they arrived at the new camp, only 20 boys were left, the others dead on the wagon floor or thrown into the snow, landing as lightly as birds, with their beaks open and their eyes round and dark. An officer told the boys to stand in a line, and the boy held his breath. But the commander waved his hand and said, "No matter, they will die in the camp." So he survived again. Mama and Bruder had burned the first day in the first camp, and Vater had grown too sick to work and been shot, but the boy survived. He survived a long time. He made it to a new world. He met a kind woman who didn't ask about the past and had 2 sons and 5 grandchildren who traced the number on his arm with chubby pink fingers. As an old man, he went back in spring. Outside the northern camp by the front gate, red geraniums grew. He watched the petals wave in the breeze and began to cry. "You have no right, no right," he mumbled, his tears choking him, although he knew it wasn't their fault. The second poem is called Ocean Grove. I wrote it in Lorraine Babb's class. This was my very first class at the Writers' Studio. It was published in a print anthology called Below the Waist by Papichu Publishing, and a reprint was published in Beyond Words Literary Magazine in February of this year. August 26. The sun pours like lemonade. The sand burns. I squeal, hopping to the water's edge on my toes. The ocean makes room for our legs, our warm bodies. Our chatter and noise mix with the call of the gulls above. I wear a coral one-piece, you your yellow trunks. We are like bright flowers in the dark water. The wind and water dance, flamenco, full of passion and violence. Suddenly a wave lifts me and hurls me onto the hard sand below. I come up laughing, mascara running, clawing the wet sand, ankles quivering. You laugh too, to see me overpowered. The water splashes into our open mouths. We choke, then laugh again. The silence of these last sad months is gone. We splash and yell like children. The waves are like wild horses, shaking their white manes in the sun. Their watery hoofbeats trample me. Shells and stones cut my skin, and the salt stings the wounds. The joy of it, to give in, to give up. I am pink and raw, I sting all over. I am forgiven, bathed in the world's sharp tears, but not my own, not the incessant, pointless weeping of the last 6 months. A seagull circles overhead, his yellow eyes like pieces of citrine, his call like the cry of an infant. He is so beautiful, I want to grab his tail and fly with him. The waves hit again, I crash onto the floor of the world, then struggle to my feet. I wipe my eyes and look for you, but you are far away now. So much the better. I quiver within the ocean's giant muscles. It holds me in its arms. At this moment, I could shatter into a million droplets and finally find my way home. This last piece is called Sexual Cannibalism in the Black Widow Spider. I wrote it in Joel Hinman's class, and it was published in Honey Guide magazine, and it was nominated for a Best of the Net Award in 2022. You've heard of the Black Widow, that bulbous red-flecked arachnid who cannibalizes her lovers. No one knows why she kills. The male needs sex, would die for it. Once he's forced his sex organ into her opening, the female, that femme fatale, seizes his body with long, grasping legs, cocoons him in a coffin of silk, liquefies his flesh with poison, and slurps him up like a spider smoothie. Males try all sorts of tricks to copulate without dying. Tanodera waits until the wind is loud in her ears, then takes advantage of her confusion to pounce. Agalenopsis drugs her with pheromones that induce a comatose state. Nephila binds her legs in silk to keep her still. Half escape, leaving behind their genitals, severed from their bodies, lodged in her opening so she cannot mate again. To the male, sexual ownership is worth the ultimate sacrifice. In laboratories, the scientists peep through magnifying glasses. They salivate and wipe their mouths with the ends of their ties, then turn to each other to analyze. Why can't she let nature take its course? Why is she such a bitch? Hypothesis number 1, aggressive spillover. Some females, feminazis, are too feisty and don't know when to call it quits. Scientists note that such antagonistic behavior may drive away potential mates, a dreadful loss. Hypothesis number 2, mistaken identity. The female, stupid cow, dumb blonde, mistakes the male for an attacker rather than a lover. To be fair, coercive techniques create such confusion in many species. There is no evidence for either theory. She is unknowable, an enigma, but to me she speaks. Behold my genius, artist, architect, engineer. My palace shifts in the breeze but never breaks, woven of silk from my own dark body. One day this ravenous male, half my size, his only function to want, performs his awkward mating dance across the floor of my house. He imagines himself Odysseus and I Penelope. He comes with his big needs and low expectations, and when I object, he thinks me hysterical. He doesn't even know my name, Lactrodectus, a strong name fit for a god. You come to my door at night without an invite, slight man? Expect retribution. The red hourglass on my body predicts your fate. I am the destroyer. Behold my strength and tremble. It is my honor now to introduce Tessa. Tessa Pagones has been with the Writers Studio on and off since 2005, originally in New York and most recently in San Francisco, thanks to live online classes. Through Writers Studio, she has explored fiction, memoir, and essay. She has recently been published in the Microlit Almanac. Tessa lives in Westminster, Maryland, with her spouse and a variety of animals. Okay, Tessa, you can go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. I will be reading from a piece that I started in Francesca's memoir class and continued in Gail's essay class. This is an excerpt from Terra Firma, A to Z, Elements of Home. E is for eagle. The bald eagles that soar over our property are no match for my childhood understanding that bald eagles are endangered. I look up at the shadow of every large bird. It is most commonly a turkey vulture, but though it's now an almost daily occurrence to see the telltale flash of white, I still stop what I am doing to watch each eagle till it is out of my sight. There are eagle nests nearby, though I have never seen them, so I am learning the coloration of different ages and stages of bald eagles. I no longer appeal to local birders to identify the mottled brown birds that are significantly larger than similarly colored hawks. I recognize them now as juvenile bald eagles who have yet to grow their white feathers on head or tail. Until last summer, there was a tree we called the eagle tree in line with our view of the reservoir. The green on the tree was almost all from climbing honeysuckle. The branches at the top were bare of leaves or vines, and the eagles would sit, sometimes one, sometimes two, scanning the reservoir below for fish, or possibly just basking in the morning sun. Over the summer, we had a sudden and unlikely windstorm that took down the eagle tree. Of all the things I have lost in our time here, 6 cats, 2 dogs, 7 horses, 2 parents, 1 favorite aunt, 1 sister, The eagle tree seems like it should be a small thing, but its absence looms daily outside my window, and I'm not sure what the eagles or I will do without it. F is for fox. Evidence of foxes populates our property. They are bold to the point of brazenness and leave their scat next to and sometimes in the horses' feed buckets, or on our driveway, or on the mat outside the kitchen door. In the horse pastures, I find rabbit legs, feathers from our neighbor's chickens, assorted parts of a Canada goose who nested unwisely in the chickweed. The foxes dig holes in the sand of our riding arena, and if I leave the dog yard gate open, they steal the dog toys. We hear their shrieking barks at night, in the distance, or right by the house. The foxes themselves are visible more often than I expected when we first moved here. I catch a glimpse of movement, a flash of red, and look up to see them crossing the horse pastures in broad daylight. By day, a lone adult trots with purpose on its busy way to or from somewhere. In December and January, I see them in pairs, hunting, playing, sitting and watching. In March and April, in the years I am lucky, I see the kits make their first forays from the den in my southern neighbor's brush pile, or in the shrubby tree line along my northern neighbor's property line. As I watch from my side of the fence, I sing them "The Fox Went Out on a Chilly Night," which my mother used to sing to me as a lullaby, and which I played for her at the first and best of her memorial services, the one to which I invited only her sister and her best friend, uncomplicated by other family or formality. G is for geese. When I was a child and still thought Canada geese were called Canadian geese, I also thought that at some point they left and went back to Canada for one or more seasons. If that was ever true, it is not true now, and it is not true here. On very rare occasions, we have a brief respite from the geese when they all fly to other local ponds and lakes, but they produce a near constant background noise that makes me wonder whoever came up with the phrase "quiet country life." When they land in our pastures, I will sometimes let one of the dogs chase them away, as the geese seem completely unfazed by the presence of horses, and I am not convinced that I want to face down a flock of Canada geese myself. The dogs are all herding dogs, but some are more easily distracted by horse manure than others, so a goose clearing run in the pasture does not always go as I plan. In the late spring and early summer, when the adolescent geese are more likely to run to get under the fence than fly to get over it, I keep the dogs leashed or behind their own fence where they can yell their opinions to the geese in the next field. As a city child who grew up seeing mostly pigeons and sparrows, I thought the Canada geese on the suburban pond near my cousin's house were the most beautiful birds I had ever seen. Thankfully, they were wary enough of humans that my desire to bury my little hands in their feathers or to hug them went unfulfilled. When I see the geese up close, I am reminded of how I feel when I see illustrations from books I loved in childhood. I can almost feel the way I saw them then. The warm coloring of their body feathers shading from light tan on their chests to dark brown on their wings and backs, the layering of different feather sizes and colors making a soft shingled appearance on their bodies, the shine of their black necks and heads, and the brightness of their white chin straps. When they fly overhead while I am outside at feeding times, their undersides shine in the rising or setting sun in a way that makes it appear the geese themselves are producing the light. I have long ago given up on trying to capture in a photograph what they look like to me on their crepuscular flights. But when I hear them honk their arrival, I always stop what I am doing to look up and watch them glow. H is for heron. The green herons that nest in our stand of ewes announce their arrival each spring with their scraw as they fly to and from the reservoir. They fly with their heads tucked into their bodies, but when they land, their necks elongate, making birds of a different shape entirely. Their nests are hypothetical, a few sticks thrown together in no discernible order or shape, yet somehow they hold 3 eggs safely. I watch for the babies to emerge in June, waiting for them to tiptoe onto the exterior branches of the ewe stand. Even from a distance, I can see the white fuzz sticking up on the tops of their heads and their wide open yellow eyes. The parent herons bring back tiny pumpkin seeds, black crappies, bass, and trout to feed the fast-growing babies. The mother heron perches in the white pine a few feet from the nest tree, exhorting the babies to come away from the nest, but they huddle together on a yew branch. When she hops closer to them, they swarm on and around her, and as she disengages herself from awkward wings and tangled legs and flies off alone, I can hear her sigh. I think of my children when we first moved here, ages 10, 12, and 16, in varying stages of clinging and independence, and I sigh too. I cheer the heron babies as they first hop and then flap to the trees closest to the ewes, as they learn to balance and walk on the fence rails, as they are introduced to water by drinking from and falling in our horses' low water troughs. When they make their first flights to the reservoir, I watch for them to return each evening, restless until I count all three of them back in the ewes. I never see them leave for good, but when the ewes are empty, I remember standing in the driveway, watching each of my children in turn drive away with all of their belongings, and wanting to reach out and snatch them back and make the time I had wanted to go faster go just a little more slowly. All right, thank you. I will now introduce our next reader. Shubha Venugopal has been taking writer studio classes since 2013. She holds a PhD in literature and an MFA in creative writing and is an associate professor at the California State University, Northridge. Some of her literary prizes include winning first place in the Southern Indiana Review's 2019 fiction competition and being one of the winners in the Masters Review annual story competition. And she has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. She has placed in literary contests by Nimrod International Journal, Salamander, Glimmer Train, Colorado Review, The Atlantic Monthly, and Fish Publications. Her work has appeared in the Southern Indiana Review, Nimrod International Journal, the Masters Review, Women Arts Quarterly, The New Guard, Potomac Review, Partika Review, Post Road Magazine, Story Glossia, Word Riot, Mislexia, and others, as well as in anthologies, including Memory and the Narrative Imagination in the African and Diaspora Experience, After the Pain, Critical Essays on Gail Jones, A Stranger Among Us, Stories of Cross-Cultural Collision and Connection, and the Robert Olin Butler Short Fiction Prize 2009. Today, she will be reading excerpts from her memoir, In Progress. Shubha, you may unmute and take it away.
Thank you. This piece is called Breast Pump. My daughter is still nursing and I am teaching a 4-class per semester load at my first job. In my office at work, a breast pump's mechanical whirring and squeezing, a sound I despise. I jump when I hear anyone approaching, convinced that the janitor will unlock the door and walk in on me with one breast stuck inside a pump. I am mortified even thinking about it. The pump is on at home while my mother-in-law sits on the bed. I'm not used to having my exposed body seen by my mother-in-law, but she's come to help with the baby and is often in my bedroom. I get over my embarrassment. My daughter is napping on my lap. Her tiny bird mouth is no match for the boulder-sized breasts that have emerged from my chest, lumpy, hard, and overfull of milk. My slender, petite baby can barely drink any of it, but the milk keeps coming. In the shower, it arcs out in 2 jetted streams. It soaks through nursing bras and breast pads and blouses. It flows if I hear another baby anywhere in my surrounding. It builds up inside and gets painful if I don't release. So I pump, balancing the machine awkwardly to my side, filling a bottle after bottle that she will likely never drink. It accompanies me to academic interviews when I try for another job. Rural Pennsylvania, where I teach, has become alienating. I miss living in a city. I don't fit in. So I search job ads. During the day-long interview, several times between the teaching demonstration, the research presentation, the interview with department faculty, the interview with any faculty or member or student who wants to end, the interview with the dean, and the formal lunch, I must pump. I perch in strangers' offices, some of whom are male faculty, because I need to use whatever happens to be closest. I am trying to focus on resembling an in control and accomplished professor, the vision I hope that they can conjure, but part of me is worried about leaking, about lugging a pump around, about using someone else's office. I have the breast pump on a trip to Aspen. My husband wants to scale a 14er Colorado mountain. I bring my mother to the Airbnb in Aspen so she can babysit while I do outdoor activities with him. My mother doesn't want me to leave for too long because if my daughter gets hungry, she will scream and I won't be there. I haven't pumped yet, so there aren't extra bottles in the fridge. He assures me, and so I assure my mom, I won't be gone long, I promise. I follow him like I always do. I'm not sure where he's taking me and what route he has planned. I find myself at the base of a tall mountain. Why do I go with him? Why do I allow myself to be led to a mountain when I have a baby to care for? Years later, I don't have an answer except to remember that over decades of behavior therapists have called sociopathic, he has trained me to agree to everything. Perhaps it is to avoid a confrontation. The times he complains that I betrayed him by acting like a person who is strong enough to adventure, and then after having a baby, changing. Perhaps it is to prove to him that I am still the person he thinks I am, the one who can tackle anything he throws my way. Perhaps it is because I trust him blindly to take me on a trail short enough for me to get back to the Airbnb soon. Once facing the mountain, it's too late to say no because my husband has taken command and I don't want to be left alone in the cold. He needs to get his way or a tantrum will erupt. There is no compromise. Once he has decided to climb, nothing will stop the climb from happening. He ignores my plea to do something easier, and I ignore myself to please him. He is pulling ice axes, crampons, gear, and rope out of the car. It is cold. I'm wearing base layers, a climbing sweatshirt, and a thick shell, gloves and hats and boots. He stuffs gear into his backpack. I stuff my breast pump into mine. I ask him repeatedly if we can get back soon to the room. I remind him of what we promised my mom. He is busy checking apparatus. We start climbing. It is straight up and mostly ice. We need to use his equipment on the whole route. I am tired for being up late with the baby and from being a milk producing factory all day and night. But he doesn't understand tired. I struggle to swing my axe, to kick my boots hard enough that the strapped on blades penetrate the ice and stick. The mountain seems to have no top. The more I climb, the higher it stays. When can we quit? I ask him. Can't in the middle, he says. He needs to reach an anchor, undo the rope, remove and gather the gear before we can find a route down the mountain. So we climb. I sweat and freeze. My feet and fingers go numb. I can feel my breasts filling fast. We finally reach at the top of the mountain. The altitude is so high that I feel slightly out of breath and dizzy. I crawl to a place flat enough to sit. It starts hailing, not large chunks, but big enough to sting when they strike. There is no shelter. I can feel deep inside me that my baby is crying. The more certain I am, the more the milk comes in. I pump out the milk with fingers freezing inside gloves. I must remove the gloves to set up the pump. I need to unzip layers, move things around, find my breast that doesn't want to be found because it is too cold. The wind kicks up. I start to pump while balancing on the snow ice as hail continues to hit and batter. What happens during the remainder of the day is inevitable. I end up in a fight with him because it takes too long to get down. He claims to not know exactly where the descent is, but he's sure it's around there somewhere. We take ages to find it, take a wrong turn and backtrack, take even more ages to finally reach the bottom, me thirsty, hungry, cold, hot, sore, and lumpy with chunks of stuck milk. When I reach the Airbnb, my mother is furious. She's pacing with a squalling, red-faced banshee baby in her hands. She says that a child is starving and inconsolable, and what kind of mother leaves a baby without food? She says she will never watch the baby while I go off again, though I know she will. I tried to tell her how we got lost, but it doesn't matter. When I'm lucky, my husband is busy sorting equipment. When luck runs out, he is yelling at me about some random thing or another that I do wrong, and I am crying harder than I already am as I nurse my baby, my girl who sucks down milk spiked with sorrow. My absolute certainty about that moment when I kneel on top of the mountain. There has never been anyone on a snowy, heavy summit with a breast pump attached to her body as she ducks her head to avoid the hail. Thank you. And the next person up I will introduce is Katie Gleason, who has been a student with the Writers Studio since 2014. Her poem, How to Survive a Miscarriage, was first published in Rust plus Moth, and then later included in their 10-year anniversary anthology. She is a licensed clinical social worker and owns a therapy private practice specializing in complex trauma. A native Oregonian and a first-generational Korean American, she loves endurance running and Scandinavian crime shows, and now lives with her husband, greyhounds, houseplants, and desert tortoises, noodles in Tucson, Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be reading poetry. The first poem that I'll be reading is from a Writer's Studio exercise that I think I had in 2015 based on Rebecca Gale Howell's poetry collection, Render and Apocalypse, which is written from the perspective of a narrator giving instructions on how to butcher animals. How to survive a miscarriage. 1, don't call the doctor. There is no cure for a ruined fetus. One doctor will tell you, your baby is leaving. One doctor will tell you, your baby might stay. Their white coats are stand-ins for the bigness of sky, and it has nothing to say. Let the blood come, slick and bright. Let it stain. Don't pray or beg. Don't pray or beg. The world is busy. Keep what you can before your body breaks. Stitch your terrified limbs, your bare feet, your clammy hands to the fertile soil that has betrayed you. Every corner of your form will need something to hold on to. When the black flush of death rises like an iron shadow beneath your spoiled tar flesh to embrace you. Take its hand, it has chosen you. 2, leave your body. You will find this impossible. The pain will start at work. Days after bleeding begins, finally your womb contracts. In the middle of a meeting, stay. But cancel your evening plans. In a few hours, you won't be able to stand. Lie in bed, assemble your bones. You will need them. Just when day's last light submits, find your leftover oxycodone. Ransack the bathroom drawer. You won't remember anything except the moment you found a baggie of fat white pills. Take twice the prescribed dosage. Try to sleep. Pain will still drag you out of indistinct dreams, claiming its possession. Don't scream. The bathroom floor will be cold. Lie on it. Your greasy hair curled around a dirty toilet, urine pressed on cheek. And when a wet cherry sack drops out of your center, your thighs smothered in rust, take it, open it, taste it. That was before. This is after. Say it. This hemorrhage is yours. And the second poem is from an exercise I gave myself in the master class based on Kevin Young's crowning poem, which describes the experience of a narrator witnessing their partner give birth. The beginning. Now that life is the same as death, now that you have been born motionless and silent, tiny lids veiling irises smaller than a grain of sand. Now that I've witnessed your unfinished body enrobed in a wet sack the size of a pear. Now that I've witnessed you spill out of your mother's heart, watched her tear. I've caught a glimpse of a mortal winter, of ageless spring. I've seen every flower that's ever been bloom to ash. I've watched petals unfold from the nothingness of your everything. Now that your mother's wailed an animal cry, swaying in the shower, her body clothed in blood, evening pearled with the effort of labor. Now that I've seen the two of you shudder on our bathroom floor, the tiles holding your souls in their cool cloud, early morning tenderly taking you. There's a world I can't touch and a world I am always touching. Even as we sleep and wake, even in my dreams, I cradle our break. I know now how a soul can inhabit more than one place. I know now what a person can endure and how sorrow carves a beautiful heart, how death breaks and polishes a body until it is stunning and dark. Our next reader is Lenore. Lenore Tsakanikas has been a student with the Writers Studio Tucson branch since 2017. Her teachers have been Renee Bibby, Philip Ivory, Richard Lace, and Donna Aversa. She has a JD degree and is a practicing family law attorney in Tucson, Arizona. You can go ahead, Lenore.
The title of my piece is Chicken Marsala, and it's a part of a larger piece. Chicken Marsala. Giovanni, my ex, is driving us to Patagonia for the 8th Sunday in a row, a meal for the residents in tow. Of late, our Sunday routine is shaped around visiting hours at New Beginnings, bringing dinner to the 12 women living there, who themselves are in various stages of recovery, our daughter Lucia being one of them. Giovanni's made chicken marsala. On the side are roasted potatoes with red and green bell peppers. I've made a tossed salad. On our first such outing, I've been pleasantly surprised that our transitional family had actually appreciated Giovanni's rich blend of flavors with the various meals he'd created. I naively assumed their tastes were limited to the medicinal. Giovanni fidgets with the radio. No matter what the station, everything sounds like shit. When did you stop driving the Beamer I bought you? Years ago, I sold it. Ah, Sophie, I can't believe you sold that car. It was a classic. Remember the Linzer Schnitten and coffee they served at the dealership in Munich? The panoramic glass doors that slid open when we first set eyes on that beauty? They even brought the keys to us on a silver tray. I remember. You grabbed the keys and drove off. You didn't even finish your cookie. I should have let you drive, Sophie, but I needed to read the map and keep you from getting us lost, which despite my efforts, didn't stop us from circling the city aimlessly for hours. What did you expect? The way those street names change and are impossible to pronounce, as if you would have asked for directions. I didn't need to. You found our way out. Thank you, Gianni. Although I wasn't much help when we were detained at the Swiss border. You were, Sophie. If you hadn't been there, those useless Swiss would have locked me up for God knows how long. No, one look at you in that pretty red coat, and we were on our way in less than an hour. I glance out the window, watching small towns whiz by, homes inhabited by parents not traveling to New Beginnings for Sunday dinner. How long has it been, he asks. Since what, the trip? 18 years. The divorce? 10. Her overdose? Yeah, don't say that word. Almost 3 months. Giovanni shakes his head in disbelief. 2 months ago, he'd arrived at my door, brought us his new woman, Cindy, a stout blonde Canadian who'd stumbled upon a social media post of a scantily clad Lucia passed out on a messy, unrecognizable bed. No doubt Cindy welcomed the opportunity to point out my deficiencies, confident that she would never have allowed the situation to spin out of control. If Cindy thought that photo would drive a wedge between us, she was sadly mistaken. An Italian man remains ever loyal to the mother of his children, the divorce being merely another chapter in the marriage. Of course, he'd raged at me, incensed that I'd hidden from him the failing grades, the dyed brittle red hair, the skanky boyfriend, the prior trip to the hospital. I held the phone at arm's length while he yelled, "Sophie, you've always been too trusting. You never think things are bad until it's too late." My sobs interrupted his rant. "It'll be okay, Sophie. I'm mad at her, not you. Drugs." I pictured him flinging a hand at the air as if he could ward off the demons. 48 hours later, he was sitting in the brown reclining chair in my living room, eating one of the Viennese crescents I'd made to appease him. He held the cookie up, admiring it. "This is what I miss most about being married to you." Within days, he'd take over my kitchen and cook his way through the ordeal, commenting, "You're way too skinny. Don't worry, I'll fatten you up." "Are you sure it's only been a couple months?" he asked, demonstrating his irritating habit of questioning me only to second guess my answers. "To me, Sophie, it seems much longer." He switches lanes, cutting off the driver to the left. "Gianni, what do you think's going to happen after New Beginnings?" "How am I supposed to know? She'll either get better, get worse, or stay the same." I look at him, incredulous that he could think that Lucia's stay might end without a full recovery. That's so hopeless. What it is, Sophie, is realistic. You need to stop beating yourself up and realize that there's nothing more we can do. "But we haven't really done anything." "What do you mean haven't done anything? Do you think it was easy for me to drop everything and come here? Spend hours on the phone trying to get her approved and into New Beginnings? Yeah, haven't done anything," he scoffs. I turn out the window and gazed and watched the miles tick away. Austere saguaros have been replaced with Palo Verde. "How much longer is it?" I ask. "A while." "Is there time to change course? I'm a little worried about the chicken marsala, the marsala part. Do you think we made a mistake?" "No, not at all. It's better if it sits for a while so the dish settles. The mushrooms and garlic need to dance with the wine, just like we did in our time." I don't want to bring him out of his pleasant revelries, but do. "Gianni, do you think we should have used only chicken broth and skipped the marsala? Anything can be a trigger." My question turns his good humor to irritation. He moves his tongue around the inside of his mouth to form an answer. His tone crescendos into a boom as he explodes. "We went over this yesterday, Sophie. Chicken marsala is chicken marsala. Do you really want to ruin the dish for these ingrates? Aren't we suffering enough?" Our next reader is Ritish Thalla. Ritish has been with the Writers Studio since 2021, exploring a newfound love for verse in level 1 and 2 classes with Francesca Moroni and Michelle Herman. By day, he oversees corporate systems at a tech startup and holds a BS in finance and a master's in public policy. Ritish lives in New York with his wife and twin boys and loves exploring the city's museums, hikes in the Hudson Valley, and Friday family movie nights, where he's perfected his pan pizza recipe. Ritish, you can go ahead and unmute.
Thank you, Lenore. I have 3 poems today, all taken from Writer's Studio assignments, all using different styles and different narrators. So this first one was from an assignment using a Diane Seuss poem. This is called Let's Go Back to the Beginning. Let's go back to the beginning, to the day when a big bang startled the rooster, before the hourglass was filled with time. In the corner booth of a 4 a.m. Waffle House where first dates refused to end. Between the years etched into a headstone. Behind the farmhouse where stardust is reincarnated as field mice. Under wooden blankets where familiar feet intertwine. Before wars were waged over imaginary lines. To when the symphonies were composed by katydids. Before the earth was raised of Empyrean iron. Along the fault lines where bloodgrass defied the embers. Before the juice of forbidden fruit trickled down the chin. Between the climbing curtain and the stage, to the start of the season when the hunter prayed in the bulrush, to when the air tasted like morning dew and burnt coffee, before the bloodhound picked up the trail, in between a mother's prayerful hands, before the judge tore up the verdict, after a supernova severed the sky, to the horizon's edge where sins are swallowed whole, before the first words were ever spoken, to the days when we were suspended in starlight, to when we danced on solid gold. This next poem is taken from a John Clare poem called I Am. This is called Dawn in Daludia, and I have an epigraph for this poem. Daludia in Bangladesh is one of the largest brothels in the world, where 2,000 women are trafficked and sold into prostitution, some as young as 10. Wrestled awake by a prisoner's wail, red shadows steeped in the neon night. Trafficked for tricks, tonight she's on sale, stone-faced, but inside of fright. Her eyes hook mine as I fall back to dream, buried under bedsheets, her broken screams. Diamonds restored in refiner's fire, garlands dipped in marigold myrrh. Drinks and drugs all bestowed by the buyer. In between, she numbs and she blurs. A moment of silence for all of her pain, swallowed in and spit out again. She sleeps in sorrow, but wakes with a song. On phoenix wings, she circles and climbs. The waves don't relent, but she holds fast, headstrong, to a promise with the keeper of time. From ashes to incense, now all of her stains, like rose petal buds right after the rains. And the last piece is modeled after an Adam Zagajewski poem. This is called Artists, and I'm going to end with this. Artists. Storytelling in styles everyone knows, but can't quite understand. They paint, dance, sculpt, sing, benevolent and beautiful. Sufi poets ruminating in Turkish coffee houses, scrawling sepia on the backs of papyrus. Jazz musicians baptized in the blues, a craving trumpet, eroded ivory, prayers whistled into the night, rhapsodic for change. They could be romantics reciting Shakespeare, or Renaissance revivalists 200 years before. They are the children of the next revolution. Woodstock in '69, sunsets in Black Rock City, the starry nights over northern France. There's always that place, an antique roll top in the study, stuffed with pens and unspoken prose. Warehouse studios filled with blocks of terracotta yet to be cut, cans of color still to be mixed. And there's always that ache, a starving thirst that can never be quenched, not by bottles filled with green fairies or sips of Japanese ceremonial tea, searching for answers in the asymmetry. So much lost, yet so much left to love. Content in quiet corners or headlighting the brightest stage, they create together, weaving a tapestry out of mood and memory, their wounds in one hand, salvation in the other, their minds exalted, their spirit flowing free.
Thank you so much, readers. Those were all really, really wonderfully emotional pieces. We're so grateful that all of you joined us this evening. We are at www.writerstudio.com. It's really remarkable how much your words touched us all this evening. The Writers Studio is going to host our annual faculty reading, April 23rd. I'm doing that from memory, not in my notes, but I believe it's a Sunday, April 23rd. There will be more information coming soon. Okay, panelists, I'm going to ask you all to unmute and we can go ahead and clap for each other since the audience can't do it for us. Great, great work, everyone. All right. Thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. We look forward to seeing you at our next reading. And to all of our panelists, our readers who joined us, thank you for sharing your work and your time and your energy with our school. Speaking personally, the school has shown itself to me to be the most remarkable magnet for curious, courageous, and passionate people. I feel legitimately grateful to know each and every one of you. All right, everyone.